Hello, amazing students. Mr. Viteri on our last day of Unit 8, day 7. So, welcome to the show. This will be a quick lecture. We only got about 4 slides today. Um, we spoke about LD50, I'm pretty sure in block 2. Don't know about block 3 or 4, but we can have this conversation again. So, LD50 stands for lethal dose for 50% of the population. It's pretty much a way that the engineers of a particular toxin, whether it be a pesticide, herbicide, rodenticide, fungicide, if I was a pharmacist and I was trying to develop a medication, if I was trying to figure out any dosage of what I'm supposed to take or not take, I would try to use or figure out what the LD50 is and something else called the ED50, sometimes also called effective dose for 50 or threshold dose for 50. What does that mean? So it means how much of a certain substance that someone has to take in order for it to be lethal, effective, or reach a threshold for a stimulus. So that's what basically that means. So let's look at this top graph over here. And notice it's an S curve. So in this S curve, if the dosage is very, very small, meaning it basically is very, very small, it's just saying concentration of a toxin. And let's just say it's below 100, then 0% of the population is going to die. Now notice as it starts to increase, it's about this 400, we're about 10, in between 10 and 20% of the population will die. Let's say in between 600 and 700, now we can draw a line straight up here and we see that approximately 50% of that population would perish with that concentration. Okay, so let's say if we were going to try to get rid of some type of ants, if we were going to try to get rid of some type of cockroaches or rats, how strong do we want to make the poison? And why don't we just make it super strong? Well, if we make a poison super strong, let's say a dog eats it, a cat eats it, another animal, or something that a non-target species eats it, you could be entering something that could potentially be very dangerous to the ecosystem. So you want to use as least amount of toxin as possible. The LD50, perhaps you sprayed once, perhaps you put down a trap once, and you'll have to do it one more time, but we're eliminating the populations, you know, between maybe one or two dosages. You try to get or minimize the amount of pests that are going to be in that region. Now, I could possibly see that in this on an exam that you could try to mess with some numbers, and I could see making this problem into a math problem. So, for instance, let's just say perhaps there were 1,000 rats in a field, and a pesticide was sprayed with an LD50. Approximately how many rats will remain after one spraying or two spraying? And so what you could say after one spraying, since the original was 1,000, there should be 500. Now, LD50 at 500, if it was a second spraying, perhaps after the second spraying, there'll be 250. So you could possibly see that. You may be able to interpret a graph too. So if you showed the graph here and I was going to ask you, well, what's the dosage of the toxin that's going to be a LD50? And you should say perhaps in this image right here, maybe 620. That would probably be a good answer in that. Okay. So try to understand this number. Try to understand how to interpret it in order to calculate certain things. So I found another really cool data chart on the bottom here. And I want you to become familiar with these things because you need to understand graphs. You need to be able to interpret them and see what's going on here. Now, I'm not going to lie, this looks like a lot of things going on, but I want you to try to find what you do know. Okay? Find what you do know. And so I'm looking at this graph and I see, oh, there's an oral dose of something. There's a log dose. Dead, okay. Percent death, okay. Something that's probit, I don't know. Now, I do know when as soon as I see dose, I'm thinking of the dose response curve. And I see that it's going up. So 10, 15, 20, 25, and 35, respectively here. Okay. So if I were to look at the percent death here, we have at small dosages, we have 10, then 20, and now look, the dose goes up here, more things die. So here, if I were to ask you, well, what's the dose or the LD50? Give me an average of what the LD50 would be for this particular drug. Well, I'm looking at here between 30 and 60 is 50. So I would say that the LD50 would be in between 20 and 25, or I would possibly take a good guess and say about 23. And in any AP exam, sometimes there is leeway where they'll give you a range of answers. For instance, if the answer is 23, but it's a graph, then they'll probably accept 22 to 24. You want to be as specific as possible, but understand that there is some leeway in the rubrics for some range. Okay. All right. Let's continue. Now, here's a pretty cool dose response curve that I found here. And I want you to be able to pause the video in a second here and then come back because I'm going to explain it. So the question I'm going to ask you here, so here are three different drugs, okay? Three different toxins, three different pesticides, three different whatever. Notice there's S curves for each one of them. So what if I asked you, so be prepared to pause, what is the strongest or the most lethal or the most effective toxin at producing a response? All right, you can pause, look at the image, and see what it is. So with that type of question, what I'm thinking is that, welcome back. With that type of question, what I'm thinking is that A would definitely be the answer because you don't need to use a lot of it because it's going to cause a response. And so look, I mean, as concentration, you use a little bit of this stuff and it's affecting a big portion of the population. Okay, C would be the one where you have to start increasing the concentration to feel a response. All right, this is all how to use the dose response curve. Right? And we've touched upon this a couple of times, but specifically, the CED has touched upon these things. Okay, and I want you to know them, and I want you to become familiar with them. Okay, so pollution can cause some human health problems, and if we, let's say, have some sewage that gets into a waterway and then we swim in the waterway and we swallow some of that water, or if we're swimming in a river, I know in certain countries people swim in the river all the time. Over here, probably not so much. Yeah, I mean, we do over here as well. I'm not going to lie. We do that too. Sometimes people bathe in the rivers. Sometimes people defecate in the rivers. If you're spending a lot of times in the rivers and there's sewage being entered into that, then that population may suffer from something called dysentery. Dysentery is very similar to cholera. It's caused by bacteria and sometimes amoeba. So, you know, dysentery is like a blanket term to describe intestinal inflammation. You got problems with your stomach. You may have a bloody diarrhea. That's a classic um, showing of of dysentery, and you can cause death because diarrhea can do that. You can die of dehydration and bloody stool. Mm-mm, mm-mm, not a good thing. Okay, so definitely know what dysentery is, know what it's caused by, and yeah, let's continue. So the next one we spoke about a bunch of times. This is the cancer associated with asbestos, which is mesothelioma, and it's caused by a particulate matter of 2.5 or lower, typically associated with asbestos. Okay, of course, it causes respiratory illness and eventually death if not treated. Mesothelioma is very hard to treat. Let's continue. Okay, and I believe this is our last slide. Oh no, we have one more after this. Oh, no, picture. We gotta have a picture. Um, and here is a gradual understanding. Now, I have a student who graduated a number of years ago. We have stayed in contact. She has made me so proud. She has a job at Hartz right now, HARTZ, and she works with ticks and fleas, and this girl just is amazing. She started at the Mosquito Commission in Woodbridge Township, I believe in Woodbridge Township. She learned all about mosquitoes, and and they may seem trivial, but they're really not because they travel disease. They're vector. These are vectors. They can cause people to die, get sick. And she also used to go out in the field and catch ticks. I believe she still does this. I don't even know. I think she does it for fun. And you know, So in staying in contact with her, I kind of understand the importance of learning about mosquitoes, learning about ticks, these vectors, because the amounts of diseases that are increasing, even in New Jersey, because we're far from the equator, everything is increasing. And so you don't know, but the mosquito commission is there spraying bodies of water, spraying fields, trying to find areas. They set traps to see what type of mosquitoes are being there. There's like 6 different mosquito species. Mosquito species are specific. Not all of them eat humans. Some of them are eat humans. Some of them are going to attack small mammals with fur. Some of them are going to attack birds. So like it's amazing of how much stuff that I have gained from her. But one of the things that I have gained is that through global warming, insects that were bound in the, and this is on the CED, so understand and know how to write this down. Insects that were basically bound in warmer climates towards the equator are now moving further north into colder climates that are now warm due to global climate change or global warming. And so, therefore, the increases in diseases or vector borne diseases is increasing as well. And so, if you look at this graph right here, 2004, 2006, all the way to 2016, best believe that we're going to have to start dealing with some of these things. Shout outs to uh, uh, Jason, because if we were going to look at stocks, Jason, maybe you should look at some mosquito or bug treatments or something like that. What we're going to have to do to try to get rid of these or combat these. At the same time, we don't like pesticides sprayed all over the place. This reminds me of DDT, right? DDT was that herbicide. Rachel Carson wrote the book, The Silent Spring, 1962. And so, these are issues that we're going to have to deal with. Okay. I know I probably told some of you my tick story. I mean, I was wearing pants with boots on, and I found a tick in a warm, moist area, and that is just not cool. And I pulled it off. I don't think I had any symptoms, so on and so forth. But Lyme disease is something that you could really get to. So be careful. Be careful in the woods. Um, my wife and I, just straight up, just being honest with you, my wife is like totally natural, organic everything, and that spray off, and so we have a debate and a battle every single time. Like, do we get bit by mosquitoes, ticks, or do I spray the off because the off has harmful chemicals and they could go on your body. We learn through biomagnification or bioaccumulation that those toxins can build up in the body, and we know that some of these toxins are endocrine disruptors. Look how we're putting everything together. So it becomes an issue. So then it was like, well, let's use an organic one. So sometimes I use the organic one, it doesn't work. I remember just buying this spray to keep the mice out of my shed in the back, because there's mice that go into my lawnmower, and they could build their nest and they could chew on the wires um, to shave their teeth, and so on and so forth. So I sprayed this whole thing, and I believe it was just like clove oil or something like that, because my shed smelled like cloves. At the same time, after the season, I found two mice in there. So does it work? Does it not work? How long does it work? Maybe it didn't have a LD50, it had an effective dose, but I don't. It didn't work too much for me. So that's a debate that goes on in the Viteri household. I know I'm rambling. Let's continue. You have to know these specific diseases. I'll just maximize my camera here. Okay, we spoke about them before, but please understand them. All right. We could possibly say that all of them are going to cause like flu-like symptoms, because you're going to feel sick, you're going to feel achy. But specifically with malaria, it's like flu-like symptoms. Then your red blood cells start to pop, and then you could die. I do know some people that had malaria. I've worked with someone who was in Africa multiple times, working with gorillas, and she said she had malaria like 2 or 3 times, and I was just like, "Oh no, don't you die?" She's like, "No, they gave her some meds, and she was okay." But she was going all over. Amazing woman, Michelle Goldsmith. Um, she's a professor at Southern New Hampshire, and she worked with gorillas. And she caught malaria a couple times. Why? Because of the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes are going to have that, or be a vector of that disease. And when they bite someone, that could get transferred to that person. So understand, mosquitoes cause or increase the rates of malaria. Zika, or the Zika virus, is also travels from person to person through the mosquitoes. And I remember personally, I was going to go. We had paid for the trip and everything to go to Peru, my wife and I. But this was before our little precious baby was born. But we knew we were planning to have a baby, or my wife might. Oh, we planned the trip, and then my wife got pregnant. And so when she was pregnant, then we were like, well, we can't go to Peru at this point. And we had to cancel that trip. So we did not end up going to Peru. So hopefully you understand that. If you want, you can Google some images. There are some birth defects associated with Zika virus, shrunken head, um, learning disabilities, and that is associated with the Zika. Lyme disease, we spoke of already. You know, if Lyme disease, they have to give you like a month's worth of antibiotics to try to get rid of. And it's going to be like flu-like symptoms. You're going to get very, very tired. You're going to get lethargic. You're not going to be the person that you're going to be. Okay. They are specific to certain types of ticks. So if you do get bit by a tick, and ticks are on dogs, ticks are in the grass, and try to keep the tick. I try to Google it or go to a doctor. They could identify the tick, because certain ticks are going to carry the Lyme disease and certain ticks are not going to carry the Lyme disease. Surprisingly, the very large tick, the ones that are typically on dogs, to my Google search, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a professional, they may not carry that Lyme disease, but the smaller ones, the ones that are on deer, typically are going to. So wherever deer are going to be prevalent, you want to make sure when you brush upon them, something like that. Okay. West Nile, also caused by mosquitoes. I think it was present in Florida and some Texas, and moving its way north. And finally, a big one, cholera. All right. Cholera, very similar to dysentery, but cholera does not necessarily have bloody diarrhea, a lot of diarrhea, but not bloody diarrhea. And that's basically the only way you can tell the difference. It's either dysentery or cholera. You're going to have, it is caused by bacteria. You're going to have intestinal problems. You're going to be on the toilet all the time. It causes dehydration. And this is typically going to be caused by non-treated water. Thank goodness we do treat water with primary, secondary, and tertiary treatment, including chlorination, to kill all the microbes. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Let's go kill that exam. Have a great day.